started? Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to welcome everybody back. And I am excited to hear how you have been doing and what you've been thinking and what your victories and challenges have been. I'm happy to have Susan back and Delaney on the team and Taisha. Yay. I think we met her briefly on the first one. I have met her and spoken to her, but the rest of you will benefit from her presence. She's knowledgeable and fun. So we're very happy to have you here. I know we are going to have at least one person that's not able to make it today, and we are recording. So just letting everybody know that remember that the recordings are available. I not only send those links out after every session, but they remain on YouTube so that you can review them as you need to for yourself or for your team. Without further ado, unless anybody has anything that they need to take note of or ask, I will turn it over to Susan and Ty.
Yeah, any questions? We're going to start talking real soon, but any urgent questions? Great. Amy, if you could make me co-host, then I'll have all of the power.
Yes, ma'am.
Ty, I'll go ahead and drive today. I've got my clicker charged up. Looks like I'm the co-host. Excellent. And Amy, I don't know if you got my message about the poll. We're going to want to do one poll. And
okay.
Because you're the owner.
Is that an email?
It is. I sent it a half hour ago. It's a really simple one, but if you could do that while we're talking, that would be awesome.
Be happy to.
Great, thanks. And you know how to do that, right, on the Zoom page?
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty sure. Yeah. Famous last words. Sure, no problem.
Yeah, sure. No, if you need to interrupt us and we'll let you know. It's easy to do. But anyway, welcome everybody. We're going to jump into our slides. Whoops, not that one. That's the second one. We're going to jump into our slides so that we can get chatting and hear from you about what has been happening in the last few weeks. Hear from Taisha, who I always love training with because she and I have developed this curriculum together. So Ty, nice to have you back. And this is our branches of resilience training. We're going to go deeper into our tree metaphor today and hopefully explain why we talk about trees a lot when we talk about self-care and team care, and also make that metaphor for you. And we couldn't find the source of this quote. When I is replaced by we, even illness becomes wellness. But we think that it's a great metaphor for our I and we focus as we look at wellness and as we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? So we're going to keep with that theme today. So Ty, let's talk a little more about the I and the we.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone, again. So, Susan and I spent a lot of time talking about the I and the we. And I remember one of my mentors saying, don't forget about the I within the we. So they're both very, very important. But that we piece, I'm learning more and more in my journey right now, is so critical in the work that we do personally and, as a team and at work. So, what does it feel like? I want you to ponder this as we're going through this session. What does it feel like to be the I, and what does it feel like to be the we in a situation? So nonprofit wellness takes great pride in aiming to focus on the I and the we, so much so that we've shifted our logo, as you can see, or yes, you can see it at the bottom of the page, shifted our logo to include a capitalized we, which stands for the we of a team, but also wellness equity. As we start this journey, please take note of these two quotes and let them marinate with you. Read the quote. And again, think about, what does it feel like to be the I, and what does it feel like to be the we? And then think about, what might political warfare have meant to Audre Lorde in 1988? And then what does it mean today? So I'm going to give you a few seconds just to read these two quotes.
Thank you, Ty. I saw parenthetically on Instagram that Adrienne Maree Brown just got engaged. Audre Lorde is no longer with us. So going over our goals for today, only two. We usually have three, but today we will, and this is the Train the Trainer. So this is for the first half of our session, our goals. We're going to complete a stressor self-assessment, and we're going to talk about and strengthen what we call our branches of resilience. And what does it mean to be resilient? And what does it mean to reframe things for greater resilience? So that's our focus for today. Hopefully you all received the stressor scorecard that Amy sent out last night. You don't have to have it printed out. You can jot down on a piece of paper as long as you have it to look at. And really these are discussion tools, this and the personal stress prescription that we went over last month. So these discussion tools will be for your own sort of internal, like awareness and discussion, the I, as well as discussion within the group, the we, the team care. So let's hear a little bit more about our trainers.
So good morning again. My name is Taisha, or most people call me Ty, so feel free to call me Ty. I'm an educator, former coach, fitness instructor. I wear many hats. I'm a mom, or Gigi right now. But I grew up as the oldest of five, so I rely so much on myself. As the oldest, I was the leader, right? So through my journey, through burnout and this work, I've learned to address the I within the we while also allowing the we to help support me through my process. I have learned to reach out. I tell Susan all the time, I've learned to reach out to my squad, right? I've learned to lean into vulnerability and the people around me and create something bigger than me, or bigger, stronger relationship, bigger outcome, bigger network, by just saying, hey, I need help, or I'm not okay, opposed to taking the team, carrying it on my back, doing it all on my own. And when I say this has made my life and things effortless, like it's done loads for me in just my stress, my anxiety, just by reaching out to my we. So my hope today is that we can help you to address the I within the we and begin to lean on the we, or the people around you, through this work. So that's a little bit about me, and it's more on that slide, but I'm going to let Susan take it away a little bit from here.
Right. And I'll just point out one of the pictures on that slide is from the Free Minds Book Club, which is one of the groups in the pilot that we ran in 2018, 2019. That's actually how Taisha and I met. And we realized we were doing similar work, or had similar visions about wellness in schools and wellness in nonprofits. And so we teamed up to adapt the nonprofit wellness curriculum for schools. And now we're doing a lot more work with schools. So that was the genesis of it right there, that picture that you see with Ty's BYW card in the middle, where she led a demo for the Free Minds Book Club. So thanks again for that, Ty. I don't thank you enough, because that demo made it all happen.
Yeah.
And I'm Susan Comfort. You all have met me. I try to tell different stories at different times. That's my kids years ago. They're teenagers now. But I have spent 25 years in the nonprofit movement. And today I wanted to share the story with you of my first burnout. It's happened a few times, different flavors. And it was the 90s, and I was the executive director of a college-focused environmental group. And being young ourselves and being focused on collegiate students, we were very hip to the latest trends, and anti-oppression and anti-racism was like a big trend on campus then. So we invested in anti-racist and anti-oppression education, even though I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But I was like, well, it's a good thing to do. We're trying to do environmental justice. That requires more staff and more understanding of communities of color and low-income communities. We've got to do this work as a team. As a white leader, it was really difficult for me to understand white privilege for the first time, and to not get any points for being a woman leader or being a queer leader or whatever. You know, we were really focused on race at the time, and we didn't have the societal support that exists now for talking about race as a team. We didn't have the culture of talking about white supremacy or talking about racism that we do today. And so I was very stressed out as a leader from this process, because it took way longer than I thought. It was way more challenging for me than I anticipated, and it impacted our output. It impacted what we could produce, because we had to take a lot of time and process all of this as a team. And I was trying to get pregnant at the time, and it was not succeeding. I was, drinking a lot of coffee. I would go down and get a baguette from the bakery and like eat the baguette all day long, like the beginning, the middle, the end. That's how I judged my day, by where I was on the baguette and how many cups of coffee I'd had. And no wonder I wasn't getting pregnant, right? So the end of the story is, after the 2000 elections, because we worked on elections, I turned over the organization to my deputy director. I took 5 months off and did yoga every day. I got acupuncture. And, when I finally started working again, that's when I got pregnant and successfully birthed these two children. And the raising of them as a working parent is a burnout story for another day. But I wanted to share with you that, when folks go through the stress of either identity or circumstances in their lives, or they're experiencing that stress at work because it's part of the work that is happening. Like, and when we change society and when we change the world, of course, these are all part of the work, right? In our clients and in our constituents, that stress is felt by everybody, whether we talk about it or not. So why don't we talk about it, right? Come up with better ways to take care of each other, because the stress is inevitable. The change is inevitable. So we have to learn to be resilient and roll with, the stresses of our lives and of our workplaces. So as Ty said, the wellness equity report, or the wellness equity part of what we do, is very important. The wellness equity report is what came out of the pilot where we met, and we encourage all of you to read that. It's available on our website. So today we're going to focus more on, how do we recover from harmful effects of stress? And part of it is by acknowledging it and addressing it, and then figuring out what we do with our personal stress prescription to lower that stress. So today we talk about the sources of stress. But for right now, if you can open up your chat box, if it's not already open, and what we'd like to know is, what new, not what you did before, not appreciative inquiry. This is what new thing, some wellness activity. What did you try in the last 14 days? Or I guess it's been more like 21 or 28 days since we last talked, but since we last spoke, what new thing? Maybe it's on the personal stress prescription, or maybe it's something that you came up with or that's not on the list yet. So go ahead and put it in the chat. Our connections, right now we know 2 people who like Zumba. We know that Amy has a dog, right? And so when you're with a team of people, finding out these little facts about each other, sort of bit by bit, can really strengthen your connection. Say, oh, Amy, how's your dog? Like that little bit. You're not talking about work then. You're talking about your dog that makes you both happy, right? And that's a little bit of small talk that doesn't revolve around, how annoying that staff meeting was, or how annoying your coworker might be, or whatever. You're making talk and conversation relationships about other kind of more important things. So just as a reminder, there's lots of things. This is not a full list, but these are, what's on the personal stress prescription. I don't think we talked last time about our planned addition. When we made this list, it was really geared towards nonprofit and educators who are very generous with their time and who give greatly of their spirit, their time, their bodies, their blood, sweat, tears, right? We all know that. When we started doing these trainings for corporate audiences, people started pointing out, well, what about generosity and giving a donation and volunteering? And I was like, oh yeah, that's what people do who don't work for nonprofits. They donate and they volunteer, right? And so we might add generosity to this list because it is a proven brain science stress prescription. And I would point you towards Kelly McGonigal's talks on stress in general with this presentation today, but for that reason especially, when we give money or give of ourselves, it soothes our nervous system. However, my caveat is, those of us in the nonprofit and education world sometimes give too much, and we're sort of addicted to giving, and we're not giving enough to ourselves. So that's why it took us so long to even recognize that that should be on the list, but with a caveat, just like intoxication, right? Or screen time and friendships, like some of that stuff can be toxic. So that's my comment on the stress prescription. Ty, any other comments you want to make about this list?
Yes, I encourage all of you. I think Susan said most of you were here last week. I really encourage you to use this tool. The stress prescription is a good way to focus on the I. What are those things I need to increase and decrease in my life? And it changes. It changes as you talk about your stress levels for the I. Susan's going to go into more about how that plays a role within the we, but check in with yourself. There are a ton of things on this list that, every time I go over it, I'm like, you know what? I can go to increase in this area. I can decrease in these areas because some things that were good for us early on, or maybe in January, I may need to decrease and start adding different things. One of the things that, it's kind of embedded in this list, Susan, that I didn't pay much attention to, but the visual and performing arts. So many museums are doing virtual things now or doing outdoor things. And art is just so therapeutic and stress relieving within itself. I again recommend you going through line by line and saying, hey, maybe I can do this for me, and a little self care, and again to grow the I within the we. So, Susan, I would love for you to talk to them about how that I interconnects with the trees.
Yes, well, this is my favorite thing to talk about. We didn't talk much about trees last time, although this stress prescription, looking at it, you see what's overlaid throughout all of the lines. Those are roots, because these are our roots of self-care. This is what gives us the nourishment we need to be strong. This is what soothes our nervous system and helps us remain. Remember, we talked about neuroscience, remain in that safe and social place. The feeling that you probably have right now. Let's all just take a deep breath. If you can take a deep breath, and be calm, like you're probably in that safe and social place. Like you can learn right now. You're at optimal functioning. You're not falling asleep. You're not hyper unless you had too many cups of coffee, right? You're in this optimal zone. This is where we want kids to be in school. This is where we want workers to be in work, right? But we have to be self-aware enough to know where we are and what we need, our roots of self-care, what we need to nurture ourselves. So we'll show you a video that helped us develop this tree metaphor, because our contention is that we individually are like trees and that our teams collectively are like forests. We'll show you another video next time, but this is our intro for today. It's from Wired.
I didn't necessarily come in with wanting to be a CEO or wanting a specific.
Sorry, forgot about the ad.
Big job. I came in wanting to learn a lot. It's a challenge.
You don't get to hear the ad. Skip ad. Thank you.
More about how the natural world works than ever before. It's kind of a perfect storm for nature-inspired innovation. During Hurricane Katrina, you would have thought that the live oaks on St. Charles Street would have died, when actually only 4 out of over 700 trees died. Why is that? Well, the trees, it turns out, the whole thing is a blueprint for how to survive hurricanes. Their trunk is spiraled, so they flex in the wind, and their branches are spiraled, so they flex, and their leaves, when the wind hits them, they curl into the shape of a Fibonacci sequence, which allows the wind to flow through with minimum friction so that the leaves don't get torn off easily. And even more importantly, under the ground, its roots are actually entwined with the roots of the trees next to it. So when a hurricane hits a live oak in New Orleans, it's not hitting one tree, it's hitting a whole community. So perhaps in rebuilding New Orleans to be more hurricane resilient, instead of our individual pier foundations, we may think about foundations that have horizontal components that twine together with the foundations of the buildings next door, so that you've got the wind hitting an entire community of buildings and not just one. Architects and engineers are beginning to explore this in other places. They're starting to think like a live oak tree to design buildings and homes that are safer and more resilient. For more episodes of Think Like a Tree, subscribe to the Wired channel.
So just to debrief that real quick, you're gonna make the argument for us. What are some of your reactions to that video in terms of how we might be like trees, or how we might want to be like trees? So take yourself off mute if you'd like, put it in the chat box. What are your thoughts on that video?
Is about today, humans, we're so much like trees. So often we just try to grow by ourselves and go through it and go through it by ourselves. And that's why the pandemic was so hard, because just like trees, we're not meant to be isolated. And there's tons of evidence, right? That we just saw in this video, and Susan has another video where you see like the trees are connected, as Shelly said. Their roots connect literally and through like an intricate network of underground fungi, right? But these trees communicate through to each other through those roots. And that's again why we say address the I. What are those root things within you that you need to address? And then looking at the we, because someone else is going through the same thing. Communicate with each other, send those signals, send that, smoke signal out. Hey, I'm going through this too. Let's talk about it. Let's work together. And this diverse, group can work together with different strategies and just someone to lean on, just like the trees. They lean and they sway together and do this work together. So our roots of this work, the roots of ourselves, of our self-care matters as we go into team care. So I really want you to think about, how are we fertilizing it? How are we weathering these storms? How are we feeding ourselves and each other in this work that we are doing?
So I went ahead and shared the screen again, and this is a video we'll watch next time. But if you want a sneak preview, because I do learn something every time I watch these videos, that's the video we'll watch next time. And, like Ty said, these are some of the themes that we talk about. Trees are best connected, not isolated. Like she said, like us, they interact through their roots, through gases that they release. It's amazing, actually, the more we learn about trees. And like us, they thrive in diversity, right? A monocrop is very susceptible to disease if you had a tree farm, right? Or a non-diversified farm. Diversity is the hallmark of nature. And so as a forest thrives with diversity, so do we. So we make our metaphor sort of fit some of our tools. And as we talked about last time, the roots of self-care are really about how are you taking care of your nervous system, of your body, of your mental health. And we also have an immune boosters sheet that helps you with that self-care in a pandemic, which is about to be revised and re-released, actually. We can talk about it next time. So today we're going to talk about the branches of resilience. How do we flex like the spiral branches of a live oak, right? How do our leaves curl in a time of a hurricane so that we can resist? Ty was talking about having a 1-year-old at home. I have teenagers at home who are going through a lot of, shall we say, mood changes. And so I have to be like, I feel like Neo, is that the Matrix guy? Like just, dodging the verbal bullets, like I'll just take a deep breath, wait 5 minutes, this mood is going to change, right? And I have learned to flex and spiral my leaves as a parent of teenagers, just to be resilient enough to deal with all of the mood changes, right? So we're going to talk about how we become more interconnected with our team so that we can survive hurricanes together, and how we can become more resilient so that the branches blow with whatever our life brings, right? We've labeled these branches, right? Family can be great. Family can be terrible. Your health, and your body gives you so many benefits, but it also can pain you or give you challenges. Money, same thing. It's a stress, it's a joy. Friends, same thing. They're stressful, they're joyful. So we have to learn to reframe the stress so that we can look at things with a little bit more joy. And sometimes we need the help of our team to do that. So we're going to practice that a little bit today. So Ty.
Yeah, Steve and I talk a lot about, the kids that we have in our houses. And, we were just talking the other day about the different perspectives, teens to 1-year-old and different things. But these stressors show up in our bodies mentally and physically in different ways, so we're going to work on that today. We're going to actually ask you to score your stress, and that may sound a little weird, but you have to address it. Hey, this is where I am. And then where do I want to go? So, like a quick example, when I think about aspects of my identity, like being a mother, literally sometimes my shoulders tighten and I notice the energy in my belly get a little weird because I get nervous. Am I doing this right? Is he okay? I live for the day when the doctor is like, "You're doing great." Yes, I survived another couple months, yet he brings me so much joy. So those stressors show up different in different ways, but how am I addressing it? How am I saying, hey, this is what's going on with me? Now, how can I build those branches of resilience? How can I grow from these experiences? So before we score ourselves, I really want you to plant your feet, take a deep inhale, and then exhale. This is a safe space, but we're going to address this. We're going to tackle this, and we're going to teach you how to grow from it. So Susan's going to take us into the stressful scorecard now.
Great. And so just before we even talk about the stressor scorecard, just looking, like I'm thinking about from the top of my head, going down to my neck and shoulders, I can feel tightness there. I can feel a little twinge in my back, like just literally like go down your body and feel where you are in your body right now. If you'd like to stand up, that's also a helpful way to do a body scan, just to kind of be in the moment and feel where your body is. Yeah, you can move around to kind of get a sense of what's tweaking and twinging today. And how's your stomach? How's your breath? That's all part of your body, right? So just a self-scan, self-awareness. Self-awareness is the first step of emotional intelligence. So the stressor scorecard, people say, well, why doesn't this have my work stress on it? So this is actually the score when you walk in the door. So this is your stress before you get to the office. And what we'll ask you to do, and we'll give you a minute to do it, is just decide, are you a 0, no stress for that thing of identity or circumstance? Are you a 1, like low stress, or are you a 2, which is like high stress? You get to decide. Nobody's going to second guess your judgment. And if you know your ACE score, you can put that in. If you don't, we'll talk about it later. You can just leave that blank. And then you total up your score, your 0s, 1s, and 2s. So go ahead and take a minute. I'll put on some music and we can do this together. Alexa, play. Oh. So that was about a minute. Take a few more seconds. Alexa, pause. So this is just a self-awareness tool. And Amy, if you had a chance to put in the poll, we can get a sense of scores. So just go ahead and put your total in the poll, if you would. This is anonymous, so we don't know who had what score. Great. It looks like about everybody has voted now because I didn't, and it's 11 of 12. So I'm going to share the results. So the split between sort of that 0 to 5 range, but more of you were in the 6 to 10 range. Can you see the results? Yeah. And so this is just a snapshot, right? It's something you could do with your team. We didn't ask what anybody scored, but it might give you a sense of like where folks are before they get to the office, right? We didn't do an assessment of your office stress. You can figure that out in some other way. But this is societal stress. Like, what are folks walking in the door with, dealing with already? And there might be an outlier on your team, somebody who's in the 16 to 20 range, and you go, oh, somebody's really suffering. I wonder who that is. And then maybe you perk up, or maybe you ask, your team to talk about this a little bit more so that you can create some team care. So that's just in a, hopefully that is gone now from the screen. So we'd love to discuss. So that was a really brief exercise, but we want to talk about how did scoring your stressors feel in your body? So you did a scan, sort of at the beginning, and now we didn't go through the list and talk about it. But we could, or you could, as a facilitator, go through each list and talk about maybe what that means. That is a different thing, because then you're actually saying words that will bring up stress in people's bodies, as opposed to them just reading the words, right? So that's a conscious choice of facilitation. So I'm just curious if those of you who could come off mute and be brave enough to share, like, did this bring up any feelings in your body? Did this bring up any emotions in your head? If you can't just, let it go and complete it and leave it in the past. Same thing about the future. The future hasn't happened yet. We don't know if you'll be a caretaker for your parents. We don't actually know. So why do we worry about it now? Because we're human. Because that's what our brain does to keep us alive. That's what our nervous system does to us. And we have to retrain our brain. The good news is we can. The good news is we can. Ty, any comments on this before we move on?
Yes and no, but it kind of leads into the next couple of slides. Do you want me to say it now, or you want to wait?
Yeah, no, let's keep going.
Okay, so I want to say I commend those of you that were vulnerable in this. Shove it down in my backpack. I don't want to deal with it right now. I just had a conversation with my therapist where she's just like, I want you to sit with those emotions. I want you to sit with how you're handling it. I was like, I removed all my furniture so I don't have to sit with these things. I literally removed my furniture from my house, guys. But she said, okay, well, then I'm going to make you walk with it. Because what's going to happen if we don't address it, if we don't walk with it, if we're not self-aware, then we're in that space, like Melissa said, where now it's coming up again in various things, and we don't know what's going to trigger it. So I talk a lot about self-awareness. It's one of the things that I do a lot with my dissertation when it comes to emotional intelligence. But where are we doing those scans, doing those assessments? Remember, you just numbered your stress before I walk in the door of my job. That's not to mention any of the deadlines and different things. So it's important that we do those self-assessments. We observe, we slow down, and we say, hey, this is what's impacting me today. This is what's actually going on in the world. And then figuring out those schools, figuring out those things that will help me throughout my day to stop, settle those stressors, and move forward, to build that resilience, to address it, not stuff it down in our backpack. That backpack gets very heavy if we don't address it and really walk over to Melissa's desk or chat Melissa, hey, can we talk about this? I'm having these things come up for me. She may have a wealth of information or wealth of strategies to help me as well during that process. Again, leaning into that team, but the self-awareness, and this quote says it's best, in order for us to do this work, we must learn to slow down, actually observe it, sit with it, walk with it, and then allow it to settle. Because we're just tossing it in the backpack is not allowing it to settle. We're carrying it and dragging it along with us. But we want it to settle, encounter it, and then we want to talk about it, address it, so we can release this thing. So I will, say a part of building this resilience is that self-awareness piece. And again, I commend you all for being self-aware. Hey, these are the things that's going on in my mind. These are the things and how I'm addressing it. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Susan.
Great. I'll also note that there are probably people on your teams that have higher stressor scores, that are going through different things in their lives. And it's not, some of your managers, it's not necessary for you to know everything that's going on in your team's life in order for you to be a good manager. It's just, our job as managers to give our teams what they need, right? To be aware of how they're motivated, be aware of, what it is their needs are. And you might not need to know the details, but if you know somebody's going through a lot of stress, you can give that person grace, you can give that person space, you can give that person support, you can give that person, hugs or smiles or a card or, extra time, whatever it is, right? You don't need to know details, but to feel supported like that in the workplace is amazing. For coworkers. So we want to build that forest of individual trees and turn it into, interconnected roots. So we always like to give you actual practices, and we're going to do a practice next that's a anxiety relieving sort of practice. It's often taught in schools actually with children, called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's a grounding exercise, meaning you are able to just be in the moment because you're noticing with your 5 senses things that are in your present awareness. So we're going to do this together, but silently. What I'd like actually, no, we can do it interactively just to model the facilitation. I'm going to call on 5 of you to give us your things for these. So one person is going to give 5 things they can see, etc. And I'm only going to call on people with their cameras on because it's hard to tell if other folks are there or not. So to start us off, I'm going to call on not Amy Elliott, the other Amy, to tell us, take yourself off mute and tell us 5 things you can see around you. And if you could make one of them out the window, that would be great.
Okay, so out the window, I see my chicken coop with my chickens. And the bird feeders are out back. And I have some plants, potted plants inside. And my furry little gnomes that I'm obsessed with. I have them sitting everywhere. And my dog.
Awesome. And those are things of various lengths, various colors, various textures, that she could see. Thanks, Amy, for sharing. All right. Is it Jim? I don't see the names on the screen that I'm in. Jim, can you share with us 4 things you can touch and tell us what they feel like briefly?
Sure, I'll do that. I have the wooden table or bench that I'm sitting on. My computer can touch a glass. And I also have a highlighter in my hand. So
nice. Thank you. And Marian, can you tell us 3 things you can hear?
I have a wall heater in my office, so I can hear that running. I've been hearing other people talk on this Zoom call, though I don't hear others right now, and I hear my own voice right now. That's probably the only things I can hear in my office right now.
Great. And the other Amy, tell us 2 things you smell.
Let's see. I can smell the tea that I'm drinking. And I guess I just smell in general my house, and we have wood burning fireplaces. So it always has a little bit of I don't know, there's a natural or not necessarily smoky, but
great.
It's pleasant to me.
I love that smell. And Ty, what's one thing you can taste?
My coffee. I didn't get breakfast yet. So I can taste nothing but coffee right now.
Oh,
About
no,
2
Todd,
cups
you
in.
gotta get some breakfast in your belly. You gotta get something to eat over the break. So this is just an example of a grounding exercise. You can, use your fingers, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The senses, help ground us, help bring us to the present moment. Because now if you did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you could name, 5 other things you could see or 4 other things you can touch. And this is great to do with kids, but sometimes it can arrest that spiral, that rumination. We tend to worry. This is like the prefrontal cortex of our brain going on overdrive. And when we go out in nature, that interrupts that cycle of rumination. When we do things that bring us to the present moment or that challenge our brain to, do the kind of burpees that Ty told us to do in the class, or to do this yoga pose, or to do that, to run faster down that stretch because you're doing strides and training for a race, whatever that thing is that gets us out of the worrying and the rumination is good for your brain. You're retraining your brain in every one of those instances. So that's why we focus on the present moment. And as we were talking about before, the past is gone. The future hasn't happened. All we have is the present moment. So why not be really engaged in it rather than sort of waste our time thinking about things that haven't happened yet? I'm the daughter and granddaughter of like epic worriers. So I've thought a lot about worrying in my life and how to stop that cycle. So on the stress cycle, and this is actually a biological, physiological thing that happens in our nervous system. And there's a bunch of brain science about the HPA axis and how it releases adrenaline and cortisol. And we'll avoid all of the, sciencey stuff today. But basically, when stress happens, like we talked about last time, when that fight or flight mode of our nervous system is engaged, adrenaline and cortisol are released in our bodies. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And so if we don't complete that stress cycle and bring our cortisol level back down, it stays in our system. And then it throws other hormones out of whack. And that's why cortisol has been linked to so many health problems. And I think I said last time, cortisol is really easy to study because we can get it in saliva and we don't have to do complicated blood draws. So there's been a lot of research on cortisol. And so what we know is, since it's a stress hormone, that's why everybody says like stress kills and stress makes you sick, because it actually does. If we can complete our stress cycle, that is, if we can get back up that polyvagal ladder to the safe and social part of our nervous system, then we complete the stress cycle. For some people, that means exercise. I know sometimes I've felt super frustrated and I have to put on my shoes and just like run, even if I'm not in great shape and I can't run very far. I just like have to get that frustration out. That's completing the stress cycle. Sometimes people cry or hit a wall. That is cathartic. That might complete the stress cycles. You can laugh hysterically, and that's going to bring down your cortisol and complete a stress cycle. So there are many ways to complete your stress cycle, and it's different for everybody because we all respond to different stimuli. That's what the personal stress prescription is about. But physiologically, the cortisol exercise is the best way to do it because you're forcing your body to do different things with its oxygen and muscles, and that necessarily lowers the cortisol levels. So exercise is great, but what if we're in a pandemic? What if we're in a divorce? What if we're in something that doesn't go away and just stop causing us stress, right? Well, then that's where we get to the sort of protein of this session. We have to learn to reframe so that we don't get so stressed out, so that our cortisol spike isn't so high, so that we don't have so many stress cycles to complete. So that's what we'll work on today. So Ty, how do we become more resilient?
So like Susan said, we have to complete those stress cycles. So now that you've learned all of this, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on in my body. I'm aware of it. I can feel it. I can, I see it happening in me. What are some of the things that you can do to build that toolkit? One of the things that I love doing is talking to myself. Sounds different, but I actually talk to myself. My roommates laugh at me because I'm constantly in this narrative with myself. My brain is already going through all of this and it's inside. So I talk to it. I say, hey, I want to give it something to think about other than the thing that I'm ruminating on, right? So by saying certain things like, oh, that's not a big deal, or is this actually true, or am I making this up? I am constantly doing the work of talking to myself. And in that way, I am retraining my brain. I think someone said that they have little gnomes around. That's a sense of joy for them. For me, it's turtles. Having little turtles strategically placed in my house reminds me, slow and steady. I don't have to get everything done right now in this moment, slow and steady. Post-it notes are everywhere. I can retrain my brain through talking to myself and little strategic reminders, whether that's at your desk. My desk is an oasis of great things. So it helps me, again, to retrain the brain. So these are two ways to build your resilience as you are, going through those stress cycles. But don't forget, you have to first be aware of those triggers, be aware of what's happening in you at those times. So do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Awesome. So then I want you to go back to your scorecard right now that you just did, or your stressor scorecard again. And this time I want you to look at anything you scored a 1 or a 2 and think to yourself, how did this circumstance or how did this part of my identity actually help me grow, make me learn something or become stronger? This again is a way of reframing or building that resilience instead of saying, hey, these are things that are stressing me out, this circumstance, this identity. Now say, hey, but how did I grow from this? What did I learn from this? How did I become stronger through this? And I'm gonna give you a second to go through that a little bit and reframe this.
Alexa, pause. So for me, when I think about one of the things that I score, we're even thinking about changing the stressor scorecard so we can judge like the growth opportunities too, and not just the stress, right? When I think about being part of the LGBTQ community, like it's caused me a little bit of stress, but like, let's face it, I'm white and I'm a woman. So it just doesn't cause me that much stress to be bisexual because I can hide it, or people don't get as upset about, women or white people being gay. It's just the reality of our society. So I just don't suffer that much stress from it. But when I think about all the growth and the joy that I've gotten from being part of the LGBTQ community, I'm like, yay, I'm so happy that I'm part of this community because look at all I've gotten from it. And then I get like really excited about being part of the community instead of being like, yeah, it's kind of a bummer. And so that's what we mean by like stressor and joy, right? Stress, but also growth. Like my divorce, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but how much did I learn? How much did I grow? Amazing amounts. And I can put that behind me now and say, yay, that's done. So how do we reframe? And we're going to practice this more in the Train the Trainer session in the second hour. But these are just some examples. So you might have heard yourself say these things. You might have heard someone on your team. And this, again, can be self-talk for reframing or team talk. And the myth is that we're supposed to eliminate stress from our lives. That will never happen. We cannot eliminate stress from our lives, but we can reframe it. And it's not minimalizing it. It's not like, well, you know, I'm not taking it seriously. No, it's actually retraining your brain to look at things in a different way. So I can't do this. Well, you know, this wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, it sucks. Like, acknowledge that. But like, how do we move forward, right? I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. This is a challenge. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this. This too shall pass, right? These are ways that we talk to ourselves. And so just for some tips, and we'll come back to this in the second session because we're going to practice. But when something stressful happens, here are some responses, right? You can accept that it's happened. Ask if there's anything you could change. But if not, accept it, right? Can test your assumptions. The mind has a funny way of creating stories. There's a Hidden Brain podcast on this, the most recent Hidden Brain podcast about stories. It's fascinating. But we have false assumptions sometimes, you know. We make up stories for ourselves. We are primates who tell stories. That's the sort of the one definition of human beings. Look for the benefits. What's the silver lining? Find the humor. Some of you may have heard comedy equals tragedy plus time. Well, comedy is very important for our mental health, laughter, very important. So even though we're in the midst of a tragedy right now, we have to figure out some comedy without even the benefit of time, because humor is so important. And then I think this is even the most important, taking a friend's perspective. My daughter and I deal with this all the time. We say negative things and then the other one perks the other one up. Like, she'll say, you know, I'm terrible at this. And I'll go, this might be a challenge, you know, a skill that you're trying to acquire, but you're so hardworking and you stick to it. And I'm just so impressed by the way that you take things on and really try. You know, I wouldn't say that to myself, but I would say that to her. And same thing for her. Like, she's really down on herself. And when I say something negative, she'll be like, Mama, you're doing such a great job. Like, keep it up. Slow and steady wins the race. Like, she'll cheer me on. And yet we don't do that for ourselves. So maybe you could take your friend's perspective with yourself sometimes and be like, well, what would Amy say to me if I told her this, right? So again, we're going to practice this. We're going to take the friend's perspective and help reframe with each other in the next session. But these are just some tips. And I was going to give you a quick preview of next month, but we'll talk about that, you know, more later. It's basically, we're going to talk more about the team next month, talk more about the forest. And that means, how do we do assessments? How do we set goals? How do we recognize habit change cycles? So we'll talk more about that next month. But just as a quick review, Ty, you're the teacher. Let's go over our homework and then we'll take a quick break and head into the second session.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. So this is your homework, or digging deeper when it comes to the I.
Well, no, sorry, this is the homework that they had from the last session. And then the next slide is the homework from today.
Got it. So this was your homework, right, from the last session. Hopefully you did some of this. Do we have a chance to discuss this today, or we will discuss it next, Susan?
Sorry, well, we did a little bit in the intro question, but we didn't discuss anything on the scorecard yet, but we can talk about that in the next session.
Awesome. So just a quick overview here, just looking over this. And again, like Susan said, we'll discuss next. But I do want to push you all, if you're not joining us, to try something new off of that prescription. Remember, it doesn't have to stay the same. And also that noticing, that self-awareness, noticing what calms you, notice what stresses you, your triggers and different things like that will also help you address your prescription scorecard as well too, or your self-prescription. You want to go to the next, what we have coming up?
I will, but I forgot. I think this was the group that we also assigned being idle as homework. Is that sounding familiar to anyone? Did we say be idle? Oh, maybe that was a different group.
I think it was after the first time.
Oh,
I remember failing miserably at it.
Well, try again, Amy. Thanks for that reminder. Yeah, we talked about the idleness, you know, springing new ideas. And I think that was part of the homework too, but I didn't put it on the screen. But this is how we work with the stressor scorecard and what we're challenging you today to do after today's session. Go ahead, Ty.
Awesome. So again, You talked about the I, now what you're going to do with the we. And think about how you can incorporate this with your team. So, what was your stressor scorecard today? And then how can you share one of your stressors you scored and why it causes you stress? Maybe start by sharing it with someone close to you in your house or a friend or someone, talking about it. And then also sharing it in the workplace, one of those stressors, and see those connections and see if they have ideas and how you can work together with that and being vulnerable with each other. Again, that's a part of team care. What are the differences between identity and circumstances? Again, these are things that I want you to start discussing, start planning amongst each other. And again, start small, discussing it with a loved one in your home or a close friend. What are some resources you can offer in your workplace for those that range in that five to 10 stress level on the stressor scorecard? And think about who can be leaders in this work in your workplace. And then, like I said, what we can do or what we can do as a team to better support each other. What are those little things we can do virtually? What do we can do when we come back together? But start planning and thinking about those things now.
Great. And that was the question that Betsy passed on for us to prompt you with, is who can be a leader for this work? We'll talk more about that next month as we build our team care forest and our team care systems. But we want you to start thinking about that now. It might be you, and it could only be you, but there are